Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black Minds News Report. Black Minds News is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, encode, deveil, spread the news, whether by news, video, website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate this information, ask the creator of the universe, be here heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Know why? Because the truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this place that you call the United States, we, the BADOS, Black American descendant of slaves, we, the today's children, offspring, and present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. You know what the motto of my show is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Today's date is February the 14th, 2020. Have you heard? Well, you know, there was a news story that came on ABC a couple days ago, and a question was asked. The question is, do people who migrate to this country are equivalent in experience as to those who have generational lineage to this land? I'm going to say that again. The question that was posed in this news story was whether those who are of melanation or melanated, who are immigrants to the United States, is calling experience in the land equivalent to what the lineage we, the BADOS, have gone through generationally. People say there's a war happening. Well, stay tuned as I get into this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing, y'all? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, coming with another thought-provoking news topic. Okay, first and foremost, I want to say what's good to the fam. What's good, y'all? Old and new. Now, those who are new, if you should happen to subscribe and you go private, which means nobody can't see your name, then I cannot put you across the screen as to giving you some recognition for thanking you for subscribing. Old ones, I will get to you eventually. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're going to get to it, right? First and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for clicking on the video. Passerbys, if you happen to just pass by due to the thumbnail, or you were just inquisitive about the topic, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. Matter of fact, this is the corner that the builders reject. I'm going to say that again. Have you heard in your scriptures the corner that the builders rejected? You heard it first right here. So again, go down the aisle, see some things that you might like. If you happen to see something that make you feel some kind of way, remember that the motto of the show is the truth don't need no partner. Now, as I do as an avid consumer of news, because I do have a platform, so I'm constantly always looking to bring things that I think would be relevant and things that just need to be known as, producer of this show. So the other day I seen something and I was like, I know that's right. And so, you know what we're going to do over here. It's going to be a nice theme to this. And after you see the clip here, we'll come back. Then we're going to pose the question that they're asking so we can get into the theme. So, check this out. Are we ready? Seems like we're ready, huh? All right, let's go ahead and ready to get it? Go ahead, let's do it then. Go on, do it.
Have the same experiences as Black Americans who are the descendants of slaves. The debate reignited after Cynthia Erivo was named to play Harriet Tubman, a role that she later received an Oscar nomination for. The controversial group leading the charge, ADOS, or the American Descendants of Slaves, our Steve Osinsami met with its founder.
Here are the nominees for
When the names of the nominees for Best Actress were read last night at the Academy Awards, Cynthia Erivo was one of them.
Cynthia Erivo, Harriet.
Stand up, take my people with me.
She is only the 11th Black actress ever nominated for an Oscar in a leading role, and had she won, would have become only the second Black woman to win the award after Halle Berry in 2001. But in the community whose story she helped tell in this important film, there is a small and unfortunate cloud that has rained on her performance this entire award season, and it's a question of her Blackness.
Harriet Tubman.
The title role of Harriet Tubman, a challenge for any actress, and Erivo rose to the occasion, paying tribute to the Black abolitionists who freed hundreds of slaves and remains one of the most important figures in Black American history.
God was watching, but my feet was my own, running, bleeding, climbing, nearly drowned, nothing to eat for days and days, man. I made it.
But when the film's producers first announced that it was Erivo getting the job, it didn't go over well with many Black Americans because Erivo is British.
So there's people who took issue with you being from England.
From England and African.
While promoting the film on New York City radio, she took a moment to defend herself with WQHT host Ebro Darden.
Well, I think there's a misconception that when you're in the UK, you sort of get to bypass all the awful things that happen to you as a Black person, but you don't.
On Twitter, the hashtags Boycott Harriet and Harriet Deserves Better found life.
You know, obviously there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that she's British, but it's so unfair.
The film's Black producer addressed the controversy multiple times this award season, including at the Middleburg Film Festival in Virginia last October.
You live or die on the shoulders of the actor in the lead role. So she was it, period.
Online, a new group of Black intellectuals found their voice with this debate.
If Harriet was part of your lived experience as an ADOS, you could bring it to that role.
They are the American Descendants of Slavery, or ADOS for short, and they argue that Black Americans who are the children of African immigrants have it entirely different than African descendants of slaves. In Atlanta, we met one of the group's founders, Yvette Carnell.
Well, there's an expectation that Yvette is xenophobic and Yvette hates Black immigrants, and that's just not the case.
She told us that she is ADOS, but says that I am not because my parents immigrated here from Nigeria.
I'm lighter than you. I'm far lighter than you. But like the cost that we bear is because of being brought here as slaves is very different.
We got very personal.
Just because you have melanin or kinky hair doesn't mean you have the same background and you are tied to that kind of systemic oppression in this country. So yes, you can come from Nigeria, you can come from Ghana. You're kind of the opposite of what we are, though. You're the elite where you come from. We're the bottom caste here. We just look alike.
It sounds like you're saying that the American part of African American is more important to African descendants of slaves.
I think it's essential because we built the richest country in the world. But we've always been very, very giving and very accepting of Black immigrants in this country. We always have. But it's a problem when you look at the number of these roles, especially lead roles, which are going to other groups and other people, even though we fought for the opportunity to be in those roles. And we didn't get to school in London. Like, we didn't go from Nigeria to London to different background. You look at Cynthia Erivo, it's not the same as my background. I'm a bottom caste in this country. That's different than what you came from. And so we don't have access to the things and opportunities that we fought for.
They think something is deeply wrong when a British actor of Nigerian descent is chosen to play the role of Martin Luther King in Selma, and a British actress plays his wife, Coretta Scott King. They see similar issues with the leading roles in Best Picture winner 12 Years a Slave and the thriller Get Out, which also won an Oscar. Even the dean of black actors, Samuel L. Jackson, is taking sides in the debate. During this interview with New York's Hot 97, he points out that Get Out's Daniel Kaluuya is a Brit of Ugandan descent, and he wonders if a different actor should have played the role of a black American in an interracial relationship.
I tend to wonder, what would that movie have been with an American brother who really understands that in a way? Because, I mean, Daniel grew up in a country where, you know, they've been interracial dating for 100 years.
And they're not just upset with the movies. They say that black immigrants and their children are taking seats in American colleges and businesses that are meant for the descendants of slaves. And they don't seem to acknowledge that many black people in Europe, the Caribbean, and elsewhere can also trace their ancestors back to slavery. They point to this 2015 study that shows that black immigrants are more likely than African Americans to earn a better living, have college degrees, and live in two-parent households. ADOSs don't believe that these families should benefit from affirmative action.
It was never meant for white women. It was never meant for immigrants or just people of color. It was meant for us. Everybody else just kind of shoehorned their way in.
Wouldn't you say, though, that that is a big generalization?
No.
No?
No.
It doesn't feel like a big generalization that someone like who is the children of Liberian parents might be just as black.
Just as black, but what they went through was in Liberia.
I'm hard-pressed to believe that someone exactly my age, exactly my experience, who's lived in the same exact shoes that I've lived in over these past 49 years would have any different of an external experience as a black man in America.
Let me break it down for you. Let me break it down for you. That's the Obama argument, I like to call it. Obama said, when people see me as a black man, I have a problem getting a cab too. My life experience is the same.
Yeah.
Obama also went to a top tier school, like it was a private school in Hawaii when he was there. What I'm saying to you is this: being black, like not being able to get a cab, or the police seeing you and saying this is a black man, right? You can experience that, but the lineage and the cost of slavery is not in the eyes of a racist, right? So you can say it's the same, but it's not the same in terms of wealth level, is it? It's only the same.
By her definition, I tried to argue that our white photographer who was recording our interview was more black American than I.
So Jay, right here, this dude, he took one of those DNA tests.
He black.
Right? But the thing about it is, this is what's crazy is that by your definition, Jay is more black American than I am, right? Because
But see, here's the thing. He's not more black American because he didn't bear the cost, because he looks like Jay.
At the heart of this black agenda is the hope for reparations, the idea that America owes the descendants of slaves a certain dollar figure for the trauma of their history. Critics of the ADOS movement say it's pure discrimination, that the racism that black Americans experience from redlining to job discrimination happens to all, no matter how they got here.
We may have gotten dropped off at different points, but we still are the glue that comes from the diaspora. And when we start picking and choosing who has more blackness over the other, who has more entitlement over the diaspora than the other, I think that's when we get into a really dangerous narrative and conversation on our community. And so we have to be mindful that we keep focus on that it is color that is the heart of racism.
Cynthia Erivo, who's also a Tony winner, argues that her birthplace shouldn't make a difference in what stories she tells on film or stage. She says her job as an actress is to transcend these issues, even if her ancestors have never had to bear the cost or the pain of slavery.
Steve Osunsami joins us now live. Steve, I don't even know where to begin. I have so many questions here. I mean, it seems like a provocative conversation, but it's a divisive and a slippery slope. I mean, so at the end, really, is this all about reparations, or is this trying to establish a I've had it worse than you, a caste system kind of situation here?
I think it's part reparations. That's one of the goals. But the other thing is that this group argues that the current measures of success, that when you measure the progress that Black Americans have had in this country, that when you include people like myself or people like Barack Obama or Senator Kamala Harris, that when you include those people in the sort of analysis of progress, that you're not getting a real picture of what's happening to the descendants of slaves in this country.
But to your point, and I was so glad that you brought this up with her, you said that we're still subject to the same discrimination. So whether or not you're a descendant of slaves, like Barack Obama, for example, he still has a difficult time getting a cab. So I guess I'm still struggling to understand the point.
You know, when I walk into a room 10 people who are looking at me don't realize that I'm from Nigeria, that my parents are from Nigeria. They see a Black man in America. And that experience is the same whether you are born in this country or the descendants of slaves or your parents are immigrants from Nigeria. One thing I will, though, admit and give to this argument is growing up in an African family, I had a language, I had food, I have clothing that belongs to my people and a community that I was raised with that does give me and did give me somewhat of an advantage over the African descendants of slaves who were born in this country.
Sure. I mean, everybody in all walks of life in every aspect has advantages and disadvantages. It's a really interesting conversation that would take much more time than we have allotted for it right now. But I really appreciate you, Steve, for bringing this conversation to us. So thank you.
With pleasure.
And let's turn now to Shireen Mitchell, founder of Stop Online Violence Against Women. Shireen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So give us a sense in your estimation of how ADOS is working to, it's my understanding that you believe, try to divide the Black community.
Yes, I mean, there are key issues that the Black community has, and that is about, you know, we were slaves here, but if you're having an argument about where the slave ship dropped us off in different points as if we're not connected to each other, then we're having a different conversation, and that's part of what I think is this debate. The slave ship dropped off in, you know, Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and other places, but that does not mean that we're not connected to the same aspect of slavery.
And critics have raised concerns about the idea of sowing division. You know, what are their issues?
So in America, we're having this argument over what is closer to, like, unless you're born here, that you don't, which is really unfortunate. But there's a conversation about nativism. So if you weren't born in America, somehow that you are not Black enough or not Native enough to be an American. And we've gone through this historically in different ways across the spectrum, which happened in the civil rights movement. But, like, honestly, you know, the argument between being called Negroes versus being called African American versus being called Black, which is where we are now, is what this debate is about. And the truth is, those who were born here, those who come here, also have the same stigmas that they have to face.
Yeah, in the long run, I mean, I think the struggle is real, no matter where you're coming from, how you got here. Again, a longer conversation that I'd like to have probably off camera at some point. But thank you very much again for your time, Shireen Mitchell.
No, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it, because I know you've been trying to hold the line about the way in which that we're having this conversation about race in this country and also how it affects the vote. And I'm hoping that we have a broader conversation about the way in which this impacts voter suppression and digital vote suppression, because this is a target on the way we vote in this country.
Certainly, voter suppression, big issue as well. Thank you again.
So we are back, right? So yeah, that was a news broadcast that came out of ABC, and had Lindsay Davis, and I think the interviewer name was Steve Osusami. And so what Lindsay Davis proposed, or the title to the news broadcast was, do black immigrants have the same experiences as black Americans who are the descendants of slaves? I'm going to say that again. Do black immigrants have the same experiences as black Americans who are the descendant of slaves? Right? And that was what they were talking about. The experiences. Right? Now you got to understand that. Now that's the key word they're trying to use. Right? Similarities of the experiences. Right? So also, did you also notice that as that started to get into the story, so we see ABC News called it a what? A Diaspora Wars. I'm going to say that again. So this ABC News broadcast was calling this segment the Diaspora Wars. Now, based on the general understanding that most people have of understanding what the diaspora is, most people assume that diaspora means that of the transatlantic slave trade and those who were put on certain different geographical locations. So we're going to be specific as to get a true understanding when we use these words, because again, you got to understand, just like if you have to go in front of judge and you have to use the law, you have to have someone who understands and interprets the law, not how you take it, but how it is in the game. So we're going to take that word diaspora, and let me tell you what diaspora really means. Diaspora is the settling of scattered colonies of Jews outside of Palestine of the Babylonian exile. I'm going to say that again. The word diaspora means the settling of scattered colonies of Jews outside of Palestine of the Babylonian exile. Also, it means the area outside of Palestine settled by Jews. And migration, the Great Black Migration to the cities of the North and West, 1940 through 1950. I'm going to say that again. Also, meaning in diaspora, in the term, in the way that it is used, it talks about the Great Black Migration to the cities of the North and West during the 1940s and 50s. Now, what they have done, when you go look, and everybody pretty much use Google or some kind of search engine, but if you go on Google online, you're going to see that it's going to say that diaspora, right, is going to mean the dispersion of any people from their original homeland. I'm going to say that again. Online, Google will say the dispersion of any people from their origin homeland. But what I read to you originally comes out of your dictionaries, If you have dictionaries, again, those who haven't watched this, I talk about having tangible books because, again, who owns the server controls the information. So sometimes you have to have, again, black folks, I think, should be purchasing books either for yourself or for those who are younger that need to be reading. You have to have certain tools, dictionaries, and so forth. So that way, you have a better understanding when you can go through your own and look and see, so you can find out where this coded language people are using. So when they say the word experience, experience is trial, act of being tried, observations of facts, conditions of event by which one is affected resulting, knowledge from observation, state of having been occupied in some way. I'm going to say that again. Experience, trial, act of being tried, observations of fact, conditions of events by which one is affected resulting, knowledge from observation, state of having been occupied in some way. So the question is asked, what they try to say that this diaspora war between black American descendant of slaves of the descendant lineage versus those who are immigrants, that the question becomes that we question their blackness. Okay? This is what they saying. We question their blackness. So when people say that we as the lineage of the United States of the slave history here, that we cause a dissension amongst those who come from other places, who come here to this land and say we got an issue with them. Somebody come visit your house, right? And then they got a problem how the way you run your house, how you play your music, how you dress, how you talk, what you talk about. If you came to somebody's house that you didn't like, what would you do? You would leave, right? You would leave, right? But in this case, you can't leave because you're already running, right? So, all right, so let's look at blackness. Blackness is the property or quality of being black in color, okay? Say that again. Blackness, the property or qualities of being black in color. The fact or state of belonging to any human group having dark colored skin. I'm going to say that again. The fact or state of being or belonging to any human group having dark colored skin. Okay? Now, you trying to say that black Americans are talking about immigrants and saying that they color in the skin, the hue, the melanin that they possess, that we're questioning whether they are black? Hello? Hello? Does anybody hear me? They saying that we are having a diaspora war with immigrants who come to the United States based on the simple fact that the exterior, that we all can notice and recognize that the hue, color, melanin that I have, that you possess also, we as a group question the blackness of immigrants. Now, how stupid and how dumb does that even sound? Does that sound dumb? That sounds very idiotic, right? But this is the game that people are playing. So it is incumbent that somebody has to do this, and we being Black Minds News, we're going to pick up the torch. And I think we need to put it in this way, so that way, so anybody tries to question it, it's already laid out. Now, let's look at blackness to race, right? In this country, African American culture, as known as African Americans to the cultures of the United States, either as part or distinct from American culture. I'm going to say that again. What blackness means in this country is the United States. When it's blackness to race, African American culture, as known as black culture in the United States, refer culture, contributions of African Americans to the culture of the United States, either as part or distinct from American culture. Black nationalism. Now, they say that when we talk about blackness in this country, it is that who advocates a racial definition or redefinition of national identity. I'm going to say that again. Advocates a racial definition or redefinition of national identity as a national identity as opposed to multiculturalism. Black pride, a slogan. Pride in being black related to black nationalism, Black Panther, and Afrocentrism. Okay? Right? Now, based on the definition that I just presented to you, would anyone think that these terms are all inclusive, or are they distinct and direct? I'm going to say that again. What I just gave you the definitions to, again, we talk about diaspora, when we talk about the word experience and blackness. Are these terms all inclusive, or are they distinct and direct? Is there a theme of criteria to be considered to be Black American? I'm going to say that again. Is the term blackness that we use in this United States, is this inclusive, or are they distinct and direct? And is there a theme of criteria to be considered to be a Black American? Is the question, right? So we have to seem to have to settle this score. We seem like we have to explain this because it seems to be obvious, because people are just playing games, right? Just understand what I'm saying. People are playing games. So, let's look at it this way. To say that to be black is not an exclusive right solely based on color, right? Black skin, black melanin, is not exclusive right that we as BADOS, Black Americans, however you want to define yourself, we cannot monopolize black skin. Anyone trying to say that that's what we're trying to do? Of course you're trying to make us look crazy. You're trying to make us look crazy saying we're trying to monopolize black skin and say we're the only black people on the planet. Come on, right? Come on with that, right? So, blackness, I'm going to tell you what blackness is from a Black American's perspective. Blackness is based on the heritage, our portion to this country, our demand for the rightful share, our birthright, the lot we've been put in, our past, our history, our ancestry, and our ancestral line, not excluding the African part, but our existence to all rights which they and we fight, toil, bled, died for, we, the Black American family. The descent, the hereditary, the pedigree, the strand, the stock, we are under attack. And if we don't take a stand, everyone will be trying to blur the lines, right? Think about it. Everybody will be trying to blur the lines, right? If we don't sit here and say nothing about it, do you think they will not blur the lines? So, they want to blur the lines, so what end up happening is that our contributions is worthless to what has been laid and what has been slowly dissipating, so they can now take and make their story. It's kind of like the Jacob and Esau story. I mean, y'all familiar with the Jacob and Esau story in the Bible? Wasn't it Esau the one that was supposed to be getting the blessings from his father Jacob? Now, Jacob was an old man, according to the way they write it. He was blind, couldn't see, but he had told his son Esau to come next to him so that he could bless him. But before he could bless him, he told him he wanted to have his favorite dish. He wanted some venison. And Esau was a hunting man. So what Esau did, granted his father's wish, went out and went hunting. But at the same time, Mama Sarah was in the corner ear hustling. She heard the conversation, knowing that Jacob is about to bless. Did I say Jacob? I'm sorry, y'all. Oh, man, wait a minute. I already messed up, didn't I? I said Jacob? Damn, I said Jacob. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Oh, shit. So anyway, what ended up happening is she gets the son, has him put on the same attire that his brother would. He was a hairy man. So he puts on some stuff, I don't know, where she went and cut one of her wigs up, got a goat or whatever it was, put it around the arms and stuff, put on his shirt, because I guess at this time, you know, he ain't got the internal plumbing that we had today where you could go and take a shower and that. So, you know, a manly man is just going to be funky because he's doing work, right? Sometimes that's how you kind of can distinguish in the old school days. But just got off work, smell funky. He ain't tripped. He just got off from work, right? But, you know, at those times, I tell you, you don't got no shower stuff and you don't wash it where you just coming home, whatever. But, okay, but you know what I'm talking about. So what she had to do is, based on that, the story says that he can't see, so he's not going to be able to see him good, but he already know he's going to be kind of like trying to touch and feel. So the mother helps to disguise. He goes back. Father like, damn, that's kind of fast. But Mama done already got the meal cooked and everything, gave it to him. I don't know, did Mama have venison too? I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Did the Mama have the venison too? But anyway, he goes in there and he's talking to his father, and the father's kind of like, well, you know, your voice don't really sound like your brother. You kind of sound like you. But it's like, is this really you? Well, he said, it is me, Father, this is I. Okay, well, come closer. He says he's feeling on it, like the hair, like feels like you, smells like you, so I guess it is you. So guess what happens? The father blesses the son, right? With the words. Now, here comes Esau afterwards. Got the venison and ready to cook the meal. Father like, what are you talking about? We already done ate. What do you mean, Father? I already blessed you. What do you mean you blessed me? Hey, I just came from out. Oh my God, I've been tricked. Now, a lot of people who take this story and make it to be the foundation of organizations and true and all that, I done already did a video where I ain't against, look, I'm cut from the same cloth you cut from. Those who might hear me and be a little offended. Don't be offended. Sometimes we see things and we don't see it for what we want to call it, but don't get a trip on it. But it is what it is. And so the question becomes, can a lie be substantiated as the truth? Right? So here's somebody trying to disguise themselves to take your birthright. So, is that what has been happening here? Well, how about when Ann Coulter said what she said? Didn't y'all remember that? Well, just in case you didn't, how about let me go ahead and show it to you, because y'all might not remember. So check.
You make kind of a provocative comment in your new book here, Mug, Don. I think it's on page 151. You write that various groups, feminists, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children, and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks, at least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They got the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks. No, I think civil rights are for blacks. No, I think civil rights are for blacks. No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
See, this is essentially the problem, and the Republicans
Can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country. Can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country. Can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country. Can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country.
But you see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants of immigrants. But you see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants. You see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants of immigrants. And we understand that not everybody, there are Native Americans in, but we understand in this country, that kind of self-deportation, making things so difficult for immigrants, for undocumented. We understand in this country that kind of self-deportation, making things so difficult for immigrants, we understand in this country that kind of self-deportation, making things so difficult for immigrants, for undocumented immigrants, that they have to leave, or the DREAM Act, vetoing, threatening to veto the documented immigrants, that they have to leave, or the DREAM Act, vetoing, documented immigrants, that they have to leave, or the DREAM Act, vetoing, threatening to veto the DREAM Act, which is what Romney has said. And again, we have Governor Romney, who is basically taking a position that is anti a large and the fastest growing segment of the electorate.
And here's the thing, if Republicans don't do something with immigration, and if Republicans are so far away from Latinos, they're going to lose not only this election, they might lose the White House for generations.
The future.
And Texas could turn from red to blue.
That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics, because they're a larger group of Hispanics now. But can I just say to Jorge, I hate to. That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics. That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics. That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics, because they're a larger group of Hispanics now. But can I just say to Jorge, I hate to disagree with you when you're attacking President Obama, but I think the point on immigration is you can have open borders or you can have a welfare state. You cannot have both.
So that was Ann Coulter and the round table that they had, and they were discussing about immigration. And what came up on the table was a quote that they thought they were going to be able to get Ann Coulter. It's kind of like Gayle King having a conversation with Lisa Leslie, and by posing this question live, thinking that maybe you wouldn't hold the position, but stood firm, not because this is what she wanted, it's because it is the truth. I'm going to say that again. Ann Coulter had wrote a quote, or they took a quote out of a book that she wrote, and he wanted to use this as an opportunity to address it live, and maybe the pressure by being live, and maybe you didn't really mean that, and here was a chance to clean it up. And she stood fast on her words, what she said, and she explained it thoroughly. Right? So, anybody have any doubt as to what I had said prior to? Here was the example right here. And let's see, the word that Ann Coulter used was commandeer. Commandeer, okay? Commandeer means to seize, forcibly possession, to draft yourself as us, as I'm saying, induct yourself in as us, to assume the position as one of us, to pressure yourself on us, to try and steal, strong arm, bully, abduct, carry off, hijack, rob, rape, pillage. You understand what I'm saying? So, if Ann Coulter is right, and based on what we all see today, is Ann Coulter right? That was years ago when she said that, right? Then there must be either a secret mission to commandeer we as Black Americans, or everyone is playing stupid, right? That's what we have to assume. We ain't gonna have to assume. It is what it is, right? So I see this. I want you to understand too. Let me show you this. Right, what I'm about to show you is that there was a show I had watched, and what the show was showing was a question, kind of like what's the question here when it comes to the ABC broadcast, again, about the Diaspora war. Do Black immigrants have the same experience as Black Americans, right? And so it becomes, a topic that after this had, been played. And I seen this one particular show called In Search for Uhura. And they had an individual that was on there, and the co-host was from Haiti. And he has kind of a vitriol, he say, love for Black Americans. But if you should happen to go over there and see this, the title of the show is called, Do Black Immigrants Have the Right to Question Black Americans Being in the United States? And so what he did is, I'm not going to say all. Now, again, there's going to be some people who hear me who might be on the other side of this issue. Now, this here isn't about hating immigrants, especially Black immigrants. This is about people, as Ann Coulter said, commandeering our birthright by trying to confuse and bring, as they try to say that we are the ones who trying to cause division. How can we cause division in our own house? Think about that. If I'm in my house and you got a problem about how I do, then I guess the common courtesy would be for you to get yourself and those with you in lead, because we're in total disagree that we disagree to disagree. But in this case, people are trying to make black Americans in this country come across as we don't know what we're talking about, that your point is, convoluted to the point that I don't understand. But we understand that the reason why a lot of people want to have other people here, and we understand why people who came from other places come here. Again, you say search for better, but what you're going to find out here, there was, again, in this conversation that they had, was an individual who came who kind of was in opposition to the co-host, which I have, but I won't play him because you would be angry if you hear him talk. And he tried to say he talked on behalf of what's good. But the individual that I'm going to show you here is a native-born African from Nigeria. And he's going to explain to you how he believes that the person who was the co-host said some things that really can't be substantiated, and that he believed that it's not right in his position to even be saying. And he's going to give you the other side to it, as from the perspective of the African and his experience, what he knows, and then something personal. And getting that queued up, it should be coming up pretty soon. And so that's what we're going to do here, right? I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so once I get this queued up, you can go ahead and we can see that. And, we got to recognize people that people are being very secretive about how they're doing what they're doing, but we have to address this. Not because we're trying to be divisive, but it just seems that people who think that we're not as intelligent because you're not lettered, you don't have all the doctrines. To me, that just means you just drink a lot of the damn Kool-Aid. Don't necessarily mean that your ass is intelligent. But a lot of people equate that. And then to see some of the people that was in there when Ann Coulter was saying what she was saying, the black woman that was in there, she tried to say that what Ann Coulter said wasn't true. But let's look at, now that we in the 2020 Democratic campaign, is it or is it not, right? Is it or is it not what she said? Are they going around the black vote, or are they just trying to find the confused aspect of black people and not deal with the ones who take the stance that like I take and others, and saying that if politics game the way it's played, then we're going to play it the way it is. So you don't want that. You want the same old MO, modus operandi, chicken dinner and a good speech without having to giving up anything. And so listen to this individual that I'm about to play. Again, this is coming from another show. I just took this particular part because he's going to end up saying things in opposition, and you're going to see the host get rid of him. He's going to interrupt when he starts talking about something that is not going to sync that he wants. He's going to interrupt him, and then he's going to do it again at the end where he's going to basically get rid of him off the show. And yet the dude that advocates on this show, that's what he does. He's really, a person who's supposed to be advocating for, the repatriation of black Americans back to the continent. But here was a continent individual telling some truths that some of us might have heard and may not never had heard. His name was Kayode Akinbo. So check this out, and I will come back after that, right? So let's go ahead. We good? Go ahead, cue that up. Let's get it. Let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do it.
Thanks for bringing up the discussion. I've been thinking about it, like the contribution of Africans to trying to help African Americans. I think Lou makes some important point, but it's so wrong on so many levels. So let's start from this. Africans or African immigrants who go to America are actually skilled people. Most of them are educated. They didn't go through police brutality. They didn't have issues with putting them in like solitary confinement when they were in high school. So they were high flyers from start. They didn't have those setbacks. So when they go to America, America only picks, let me put it this way. When America accepts visas, they ask for your experience, for your educational background, for all of this. So they're basically picking the best. But if you're blaming African Americans for what is happening, I think you also have to remember that the Africans that come here to succeed, they are mostly professionals. It's like someone more experienced than the president of the US is actually is among some of those people that come to America. So you cannot compare those people to African Americans who have been deprived of good education as a result of police brutality, a lot of issues going on. But you made a point about African Americans not developing things. You also have to think about the fact that Africans don't even understand the problem of African Americans. Many Africans when Africans talk, we talk like white. Your issues about trying to say African Americans should have to put themselves at the bootstrap and stuff like that. That's what white people say to African Americans. And I think it's wrong for us to also speak like that. We have to understand the history of these people. We have to educate ourselves about the challenges African Americans face. Educating ourselves, when I mean ourselves, I mean educating African Americans too about them being the victim of this party. The fact that African Americans will always vote Democrats all the time or follow this political party. No party is for African Americans. We have to educate each other before we start putting blames, because the way some Africans, I'll say Africans behave is that we behave like whites. Because I'll tell you, my wife here, when she arrived here, she didn't even understand anything about racism because she was just getting here because all her life she didn't really know racism was an issue because she grew up in Nigeria. But when she got here, she realized that some people will call her names, Asians will call her names, but she was ready to just let it go and say, oh, whatever, it's just, they're terrible people. But African Americans don't just face this verbal abuse all the time. It's institutionalized. We were talking about why can't African Americans build homes? Why can't they buy houses? Why can't they do this? If an African American buy a house in a white neighborhood, the next thing the white people are going to do is move out.
Sorry to cut you off.
So someone just said on the chart, it's a lie, skilled Africans don't come to the US. When I talk about skilled, I'm not talking about schooling. I'm not talking about you've gone to school, you have a degree. Degree doesn't make you skilled. In fact, there are many people who went to university who are not skilled. An African trader who knows about African medicine is skilled. An African trader who knows about African cultural intelligence is skilled. Being a skilled labor doesn't mean you have a university degree. See, I would tell you the only skill I have is my academic degree. I'm not skilled like some of these people who are market women, who are people who have indigenous knowledge. So when you say that Africans who come to America are not skilled because some of them don't have certificate, I think that is misinformation. You have to understand that Africans have their own system before we have Western education, and some of these people who come to America are actually skilled in this way. So going back to the issue, many African Americans have been misinformed about Africa. Africans have been misinformed about African Americans, and the image of African Americans that we see on TV is the image of a gangster, right? You'll see Snoop Dogg.
All right, so we are back. Want to apologize for the technical difficulties that we didn't have everything in its place, but we worked it out, right? So, again, the foundation is the beginning video. So don't forget what the beginning of this was about, right? So we see that this African brother here had said some things that you heard that some people may not know. He said that in order for you to get a visa to come here, when you fill that application out and list again experiences, he said experience too, didn't he? And so he's saying these people who get the visa are skilled people, either academically, they have a trade, labor. These are not regular individuals. These are people who, again, if you have something that the white man can use, and I just put it like this, those who are familiar with the Bible, the story of Nebuchadnezzar. Didn't Nebuchadnezzar take all the choicest people from amongst the Israelites? Took them, stripped them of their name, fed them his delicacies, and used their talent to keep what? His kingdom going. Let me say that again. Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible took the children of the Israelites, the choicest ones, the smart, bright ones, stripped them of their name, acclimated them into his system so that his kingdom could function better. Now, have you ever worked somewhere and they had a position open, like supervisor, right? Manager position. A lot of times it seems that companies don't hire from within when they want to fill those positions, right? They get somebody from the outside. Now, there's some people who will try to apply, and sometimes depending on the rapport you have with your job, you might get it if it's not going to cause a lot of disruption, right? So the same thing here was the United States when they bringing black immigrants into the United States. According to what this brother here says, these are not like how some people say that our brothers be sitting on the corner. Some of our people who are not educated, right? Who are, have no skills. Or what they did is they undermine you, undercut you. See, they take from otherwhere and then bring you in here, and that way I don't have to deal with you, and I keep you as the caste, as Yvette Carnell talked about, a bottom caste. So I undercut you when you don't aspire and drink all the Kool-Aid and become inundated with the mindset, again, as I told you before about the book, The Golden Stool, and the missionaries talking about in order to be a black person, to be accepted by white people, had to become a black white person. And so we end up having is that in that conversation, what they were talking about is the fact that they say black Americans haven't developed anything in this country. And the individual who was talking was from Haiti. But he had every excuse in the book about Haiti. But when it came to black Americans, the vitriol that came out of his mouth, and then try to be condescending by saying, well, the reason why he's talking is because he loves us. If you go over there and hear this conversation, you're going to be appalled. Some people say, well, truth cut like that. But I think when you ain't, again, the question becomes, do black immigrants, when they try to intertwine your experience by being in the country that is founded on, if you want to say racism, blackophobia, and everything else that comes with racism, well, that's just the core of the country. But to sit here and try to act as if like there's no difference between those, when we talk about history and what has done took place in this land, and these are the descendants and bloodlines and generations of that which was of history, still present of this day. And somebody who is coming as a better caste from their place here, and then want to talk about how we can build communities and we can build, is because obviously you have not gone through what we've gone through in this land. And it's not just the physical. And that's what a lot of people try to make it equate to. It's just the physical, the beating, the hanging. What about the psychology, the psychological damage? Did they not say that trauma can be passed from generation to generation, which means it's probably in your DNA? So even to say that we're talking about 400 years ago, that somebody, I ain't gonna say somebody, of my ancestors, of our ancestors, who went through what they went through, and then you constantly, this machine is constantly bombarding new trauma, then how deep is the psychological trauma? That's why why in this black corner, the corner that the builders reject, seeing that we, the black media, the black corner of YouTube, and how we are talking to our people, and now they're fighting, trying to find a way to cut this off. Because we speak the language of what we are connected to. We not giving the gimmicks and the jingly shiny things and using people that you parade again in their face and glamorize them and make them to be this so-called idol, that what we just seen a couple days ago, an individual who did the right thing by stating what he believed to have been facts, that many people believe that's how they felt. But because of the ending of that, it was usable as a backdoor to now reverse it and throw it back on him. And now, not that there's anything wrong with what he had to do, but he couldn't stand firmly on it. And if he did stand firmly, he was going to have to deal with the full-blown consequences of an action that is just a natural reaction, but it's because we talk about it, everybody is offended when we start talking about the truth. Everybody gets offended when we start talking about the damn truth. And so those who come here, they say they regurgitate the white points. You heard that brother in there say that, you know what? Africans come here and become white, right? That's what he said. Africans come here and they be white. Well, let me show you something. Since everybody want to try to say that, because what we try to do is we're trying to position ourselves to be self-identified, and it's a problem for everybody because we're doing that. And so we're divisive. We're causing divisions. People are angry, and it's like, what are you angry about? What does our position have to do with anything? And then try to use, which I'll talk about a little later. But let me show you this. There was this article that came up. Let me show you this. Why some black Puerto Ricans choose white on the census. It was an article. Now, black Puerto Ricans. Now, wait a minute. Now, again, you're talking about blackness in skin. So we have a term talking about everything of my skin ain't my kin. And this article is saying that there's people who are black, who are Puerto Rican. Black is you and I, if we're going to talk about blackness. But in their mind, as I told you about the golden stool and the missionary books, want to become a acceptable black person, because you got to have a white mind. It's not about how you looking, it's how what's inside that engine that operates you. And so a lot of them, if the black Puerto Rican is doing it, we know the Hispanic and Mexicans are doing it. Will we be surprised if we come to find out that there might be Africans doing the same thing too? I'm going to say that again. Maybe you don't get to check the box, but maybe due to who you are, maybe due to the simple fact that, again, you get to isolate yourself, because I don't think many of you are in the communities that a lot of us come out of. I think those have been designated for us the entire time. And so let's get into this. Because that's what he was saying. That his wife didn't even understand what racism was. She got here, Chinese people saying shit to her. But she didn't know how to really deal with it. She just tried it off. And what happens? The host cuts them off. Saying how Africans are misinformed because of what has been planted in their minds because they watch the movies that depict us in a certain light and they take that and believe that to be a reality. And then the one that's in this conversation that you don't see is saying that migrants or immigrants that come here look up to blacks and think that we are all having our shit in order and not actually understanding that the difference between you and us, we've been living with the white man. I'm saying that again. Other people have some sprinkles. We live directly with the white man that's been doing the shit we've been going through. But everybody try to act as if like they don't understand our position. They're all acknowledge, oh yes, it's worse. It was 246 years. They're like, well shit, how are we talking about 400 years then? And we talking about 240 something years. It didn't stop. It never stopped. But that's how y'all want to act. And so we have to come out here and make this plain and make it straight. Right? So, again, remember with the foundation, and I'm going to go back to that. But let me show something else. Right? So for some of y'all who may have missed this, right? You might have missed this. What about the debate that just happened less than about a week ago? Did any of y'all see that? Did any of y'all see that last debate? That debate will sum up this if you didn't hear it. So I'm going to play it for you right now. And I'm going to come back after that. And let's look at who are they talking about when they talking about what they talked about in this debate, this Democratic candidacies trying to run for president. Let's see what was said, and guess who's going to be there? The same woman who was doing this article here, the one that was talking. What's her name? Lindsay Davis. Now check this out.
I want to turn now to criminal justice. Mayor Buttigieg, under your leadership as mayor, a black resident in South Bend, Indiana was 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white resident. Now, that racial disparity is higher than the rest of the state. In fact, it's higher than the rest of the nation, and that disparity increased in South Bend after you took office. When talking about the problem on national terms, you've called it, quote, evidence of systemic racism. You were mayor for 8 years, so weren't you, in effect, the head of the system? And how do you explain that increase in black arrests under your leadership?
Well, the reality is, on my watch, drug arrests in South Bend were lower than the national average, and specifically to marijuana, lower than in Indiana. But there is no question that systemic racism has penetrated to every level of our system, and my city was not immune. I took a lot of heat for discussing systemic racism with my own police department. But we've got to confront the fact that there is no escaping how this is part of all of our policies. Earlier, we were talking about opioids, and thankfully, America has come to a better understanding about the fact that opioid addiction is best understood as a medical problem. But there were a lot of people, including a lot of African American activists in my community, who have made the very good point. It's great that everybody's so enlightened about drug policy now when it comes to opioids, but where were you when it came to marijuana? Where were you when it came to the crack epidemic in the 1990s? That is one of the reasons why I am calling for us as a country to take up those reforms that end incarceration as a response to possession, and make sure that we legalize marijuana, and when we do it retroactively with expungements to correct the harm done in so many cases of incarceration, disproportionately of black and brown Americans, where the incarceration did far more harm.
Right. I
than
want to go back to the original question, though. How do you explain the increase in black arrests in South Bend under your leadership for marijuana possession?
And again, the overall rate was lower.
No, there was an increase. The year before you were in office, it was lower. Once you became in office in 2012, that number went up. In 2018, the last year that we have a record for, that number was still up.
Yeah. And one of the strategies that our community adopted was to target when there were cases where there was gun violence and gang violence, which was slaughtering so many in our community, burying teenagers, disproportionately black teenagers. We adopted a strategy that said that drug enforcement would be targeted in cases where there was a connection to the most violent group or gang connected to a murder. These things are all connected, but that's the point. So are all of the things that need to change in order for us to prevent violence and remove the effects of systemic racism, not just from criminal justice, but from our economy, from health, from housing, and from our democracy itself.
Senator Warren,
All right, so that was Pete Buttigieg, right? And Buttigieg was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And so we see again, you've seen there, Lindsey Davis poses a question about criminal justice. Now, the question is not so much about him in the debate, but this is just going to lay the foundation to the fact about who we talking about in this country when we talking about lineage, heritage, bloodline, and the history when we talk about black in this country. So let me, again, remember he is the mayor of South Bend, which is in Indiana, right? And so she posed a question to him about criminal justice. And since he been mayor since 2012, accordingly, prior before he got there, the percentage of average of arrests was lower. And then as he became mayor for the 8 years that he was there, the average went up. Now, that's South Bend. It would be a city inside of the state, but their average was higher than the state. And so she was posing this question for him to answer because, again, there had been a lot of activism who had been questioned about there was a murder or a shooting that was questionable, and they had been attacking him about it. And so you got to understand this. Am I saying that this individual is one per se? I can't say that for fact. But I'm just going to give you some history that one may not know about Indiana. Now, they talk about in the history that there was 3 reigns that goes to the Ku Klux Klan, right? 1914, then they go back in the 1930s, and then, right, and then it rears its head a third time. And so what you have is that, let's look at this. Did you know that in 1915 there was a secret society organized in Evansville, Indiana, that ended up 5 years later being set up by an individual named Joe Huffington, like Huffington Post, right? And in 1920 they established themselves as an Indiana Klan. And accordingly, it says that the Irish, Italian, and Balkans, known to practice not so much as violence, but they were practicing like political access against minorities, right? Because you have a lot of people who be talking and be trying to say that what happened in the past has nothing to do with you now. We don't understand why you can't come out of this condition. Seems like it's a lot easier for us to do it. It should be easier for you. Because again, you are window shopping. You're on the outside looking in and wondering what it's like to be me. You assume you know, and that's the problem. You got a lot of people talking like they know. You don't wear this. You don't carry this in your DNA. This ain't part of you. So that's why we believe you don't have the right to speak on when it comes to us. So they say that in 1920, after World War I, they said that the Protestants felt threatened by social and political issues. I'm going to say that again. 1920 is what, 100 years ago? Said Protestants felt threatened by social and political issues and heavy immigration. What they say, history kind of repeats itself, don't it, huh? And so, based on what was going on in the country, and they decided that this faction of the organization broke away from the national organization. This Indiana, let's say, fraction of the Klan organization did like they did in the North and the South, where they conceded from the nation, right? And so that's what they did in 1923. And they said that they had reached about 250,000, estimate to be about 30,000 or 30% of the native-born white men. So if you got 250,000 white men, and if a white man got a wife and kids, and they got a father, right? So that means, hypothetically looking at it, that in itself is inundated with a lot of them from that time, right? And they also talked about, in order for somebody to have run politically, especially when it comes to high-ranking officials in the local and state government, you had to get the approval by the members of the Klan. Also, politicians had to be endorsed to win by the Klan. So they say what ended up happening to that they said that this went away. They said, well, due to a situation happening with D.C. Stevenson, I think he was a Grand Wizard of that time. And what they said is that that he got charged and convicted of a rape of a school teacher. And based on what took place with that, supposedly they say that the membership of the Klan fell away, dissipated. So let me ask you a question. You heard me say on this show that there's half flag for B1, Foundation Black Americans, ADOS. And the reason why I said it was half flag is because they got into a, piss and match disagreement where it came ugly and a whole lot of things, right? Now, let's say there's people who were affected by the fight between what took place. And because people were slinging mud, trying to dirty the other individual up, some of what was thrown out, some of the people is like fish in the water, threw the hook out with the worm. Some took it, some didn't. Some stayed, some went away, right? So the question becomes, if your organization, let's say is BADOS, ADOS, B1, Foundation Blacks, and others, if the core foundation of your organization is based on you as a black person, black pride, black identity, black nationalism, whatever, how you want to call it, right? Then just because you fall out of an organization, does that take away from your identity, who you really are? And one would probably say no. So let's just say if that was to be true, what they said of the history of what took place and they left, that don't mean they still not going to be white folks, right? And so some people might even think that somebody who was same sex, right? That somebody who was same sex, you would not look at them and still believe that they could also still be a part of the organization. Did you not know, for those who might know, may not have known, did you not know that there was of the Hitler Klan, that they had a regiment or a, let's say, I don't know if I can say regiment or unit, they called it the pink swastika. I'm going to say that again. Did you know that there was a segment or regiment or branch that they called the pink swastika? The pink representing like those who like same sex. So, if you was a strategist, you want to use somebody and they was down like that, because remember when I showed the video about dead man's sperm, for those who've seen that, did it not have a doctor that was in there that looked like a female that was a male? And did they not have a sperm donor who was same sex but was down for the cause, right? So some people can't see that, maybe some people can't see that, but let's just say that the history of what we're talking about here, where was the immigrants when the night riders, the rough riders, and all? Where was the immigrant when all this was taking place? Where was the immigrant at then? Where is the data that shows that the African American 4 times likely to be arrested than a white person? Show us the black immigrant data, because the way they look at us is like, well, when we get here, we realize that that stuff that y'all on that screen and y'all living like that, we kind of look at y'all like side-eye. We don't mess with y'all. So that means your children are not going to jail. Your children are not the ones in those statistics, are they? So we see in this conversation right at the back, they talk about the evidence of systemic racism. Right? And, he even says, he's admitted to say, well, hey, this nation, as he said, is permeated in every levels of the facets of all this stuff that we're talking about. And so his city would not be immune if the whole country is inundated with it. And so even though he spoke to the police department and he was upset about it, he said there's really no escaping, because the policies that are created are designed to do what the statistics are showing. I'm going to say that again. The policies that are written are designed to give the statistical numbers that you are seeing. And so, he goes on and talks about the opioid versus the crack, and how when opioid hit and the epidemic, that catastrophe that has happened, that a lot of people seem to be sympathetic, and then they say, well, we're going to classify this as a medical sickness. But he says the activists in our community were saying, well, how is it that you can consider this medical, but when we was going through it, we were being incarcerated, we was considered dangerous and giving gangs of time? Where was you, black immigrant, when all this was taking place? Am I saying there was none? I ain't gonna say there was none. But we're gonna say the bigger portion of that percentage is who? Right? And so, that's what we have to look at here, right? This debate here is talking about somebody specifically. Now check this second part out, because now he's going to go to, or she, Lindsay Davis, is now going to go to Elizabeth Warren. Check this out and be right back.
Is that a substantial answer from Mayor Buttigieg?
No. You have to own up to the facts. And it's important to own up to the facts about how race has totally permeated our criminal justice system. You know, for the exact same crime, study after study now shows that African Americans are more likely than whites to be detained, to be arrested, to be taken to trial, to be wrongfully convicted, and to receive harsher sentences. We need to rework our criminal justice system from the very front end on what we make illegal all the way through the system and how we help people come back into the community. But we cannot just say that criminal justice is the only time we want to talk about race specifically. We need to start having race-conscious laws. Housing, for example. I have a great housing plan to build more housing in America, but understand, it was the policy of the United States of America to discriminate against African Americans and people, any other people of color, for buying homes until 1965. You can't just repeal that and say, okay, now everything is even. It's not. We need race-conscious laws in education, in employment, in entrepreneurship, to make this country a country of opportunity for everyone, no matter the color of their skin.
Elizabeth, with respect.
Okay, so that there was who? Elizabeth Warren, right? And she says, she just came right out, oh, well, what Buttigieg just said, says, no, he didn't answer the question, right? But she says that we have to own up to the facts. Now, who is she talking about, we? When she said we got to own up to the facts of the criminal justice system is broken. She goes on and says, study after study shows to be black, detained, arrested, taken to trial, wrongfully convicted, harsher sentence. Is that more about black Americans, or is this about black immigration? I'm going to ask that question again, right? See, everybody wants to say we being divisive, but when you talk about experience, if you only one generation did you have, and let's say you one generation and you still haven't had a family, or you got a family and they still young, and we're talking about now, we have to be talking about somebody who maybe 2, 3, 4 generations maybe, that could say, well, it was affected in my family. But if you first generation, as in the individual that Steve Ososami was talking to, Yvette Carnell, how is his experience the same when you can go to each and every one of those of us, of black Americans, of this lineage and history, and find that we have more than one in our family who's been affected, if not been incarcerated, died, or some kind of way that's wrongfully convicted, and sometimes just being guilty, right? We're not going to say that that don't happen, but we is going to say that this debate that they're talking about is pertaining more to the history dealing with we than it is talking about you as an immigrant. Now, in your country, what is the history and what is that when you talk about that, right? That's something you have to, but when you hear, and this stat that they're talking about, we're not talking about somebody can't get a damn cab. We're not talking about somebody who say, oh, you nigger. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the things that cause and affect the families of black people to be disrupted, hindered, and what they say, disenfranchised. And so she goes on and she says that they need to rework the criminal system. There ain't no reworking. How can you rework it when y'all are saying straight up, frankly, that the systems that are in place, now we have to talk about our illustrious ancestor Frances Cress Welsing, who talked about the 9 facets of what she called it, the 9 facets of, I got that right here. I had it right here. Hold on a second, y'all. I got that right here. Because she said, that, let's see if I got that. I know I got that. I got my notes here somewhere. Hold on a second, y'all. All right, to go up the top, and I know it by off the top. So we're going to say the 9 facets that Frances Cress Welsing always talked about was about, economics, education, politics, religion, sex, war, and labor, right? And it might be a couple I might be missing. But she said these are the behaviors of white folks and what they use the institutions to control, right? These are the apparatuses in the institution that control, that do the things that they do, right? And have you always noticed that people say this when you hear these people talking? They'll say something to the fact like, it's the government. Like, oh, matter of fact, she did say that. She said this, said she had a plan to build more housing, right? You heard her say that. And in the next breath, she didn't explain what her plan was, where she gonna get the money and that. She just said that and it went right next to, well, you know that the government is the one that redline black people to keep them from participating in buying homes and making it where they couldn't get loans. And it was the government. Now, when somebody says that, right, who do you blame? Who gets the blame when you say this boogeyman, the government? Who is the government? Oh, the institution. So guess what? It's unaccountable. No one can take the blame for it. But I got one for you. I got a way to figure out who is the government. Well, let's put it like this. Since they say we've been here for 400 years, let's say 1619, going on 401 years, and from the inception of the creation of your governments and the institutions thereof of the 9 economic, labor, politics, religion, education, war, sex, and all that, who have been the people creating policies, laws, the whole time? So we was to take a DNA test of the government and got the results back. What is that test going to come back and say? Who is the DNA of the government? I'm going to say that again. If we was to take every employee, every person who done had a position title in the government, from Congress, representative, presidents, vice president, you name it, and had to make that a DNA test, what would be the DNA test of the government? What would it come out? 90 point something percent of one genetic, would it? Would it not? Would it not? So, immigrants, black immigrants that say we're divisive and that we're saying these things, so we trying to be taken out and not be a part of you. We have endured this. We have been here through the duration of all this shit. Not just getting here, not having, see, none of us can even say we got somebody. See, everybody even will try to throw the fact, oh, you're African. So you're not African? Do not, wait a minute. 500 years of my genes would not even really show that I'm African. When I take the test is going to say, you're going to take me over there, right? The test is going to take me over there. But in my existence, going in my family, going back, I can't see Africa. And another thing is, people take the DNA test, but guess what the DNA test don't tell you? It can tell you a geographical location, but I ain't never seen nobody say this is the family and this is my last name. I'ma say that again. When you take the DNA test, how come you only gonna get a geographical location, but it ain't gonna take you directly to a family so that you can get the last name and take off the name of your oppressor? Not make up some damn name. Get the real name of who the ancestor of who your people truly is, because it can't do that. So, let's go on and let's see what Andrew Yang says that night. Watch what he says. Ready? Hit it.
With respect, you can't regulate away racism with a whole patchwork of laws that are race specific. What we have to do is heed the writings of Martin Luther King, whose birthday we just celebrated. He said that capitalism forgets that life is social, and what he was championing was a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans of $1,000 a month or more that would end up reshaping our economy in communities of color, make it so that black net worth is not 10% of white net worth in this country, which is the most important number of them all. We can't regulate that away through any other means except by putting money directly into the hands of African Americans and Latinos and people of color to allow businesses to actually flourish and grow in those communities. The only way that will happen is if black and Latino consumers have buying power, and that is where we have to move as a country.
Senator Sanders, then Mr. Steyer.
Andrew, no, let me.
Okay, so that was Andrew Yang, right? He said you can't regulate racism with a white patch, huh? And patch your whole system, right? When these laws are race specific, huh? You can't just erase this when they was designed to do what the statistics are showing in every form and fashion, as our illustrious ancestor Francis Cress Wilson said. Religion, politics, sex, war, labor, economics, then all facets. So, who has this affected more? You who just got here, or those who've been here, that been back from the inception? This is why it's so crazy that somebody who come from somewhere else who sit here and talk about as if like you entitled. What makes you entitled? And then want to say your experience is equivalent. Your experience, wait a minute. I heard him say he'll give honor to our ancestors, but when it comes to us, he ain't got no love for us. Nigga, my ancestors reside in me. When you talk shit to them or about them, and if you talk to me, it's like they say in your family, you talk to them, you talk to us. So you can't separate them from us. We are one in all. That's the problem. You want to do, like as Ann Coulter said, y'all want to commandeer. You want to rob, steal, cheat, lie, and take from us, and then act as if like we too stupid to recognize what it is. The brother told you that those migrants that come here are already professionals. They're already people who are understanding what it is. And so you come here with the mindset that we're going to undermine, we're going to steal this shit from them. We just got to find a way to get rid of them. And I believe that this whole thing about trying to get us all back into damn Africa got something to do with it. You feel what I'm saying? This shit got something to do with it. Because it seems like everybody telling us to leave, but all you muggers try to come here. So get us out the way, and then you get here, and then get us stuck somewhere, and then what happens when you are, everybody know who you is. And then nobody wants to protect you, but everybody against you. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call, right? Right. Okay. Now check this individual out. Listen to what he says and listen to the response of the damn crowd. Now I want you to get a visual of, you see who all in the crowd there? Let me see if you can see. If you can kind of see, you see who all in that crowd, right? Get a good look. Get a good look. Now check this out when I play it.
I disagree with you, Andrew.
I am the person on this stage who will say openly, I'm for reparations. Something wrong happened. I am for reparations to African Americans in this country, and anyone who thinks that racism is a thing of the past and not an ongoing problem is not dealing with reality. In fact, 3 days ago, one of the leaders of Joe Biden's South Carolina campaign made racist remarks about someone associated with our campaign. And the Legislative Black Caucus went out en masse to stand up for that man and for our campaign. Joe, I'm asking you to come with me and the Legislative Black Caucus and disavow Dick Harpootlian and what he had to say. It was wrong. And I'm asking you to join us, be on the right side.
I'm asking you to join me and join in the support I have from the overwhelming number of the members of that Black Caucus. I have more support in South Carolina in the Black Caucus and the Black community than anybody else. Double what you have or anybody else has.
But wait a second, Bernie.
Well, that is quite right.
Let's not argue about polls. This isn't about Bernie. This isn't about polls.
I'm not.
Right? Man came straight out. He said, again, they say politicians say whatever it is, you're going to get them votes. And they know that there's a bundle of votes that somebody need to be trying to get. So he said, I'm going to just say it. I ain't going for reparations. Right? But did you hear, like everybody sat on their damn hands, didn't they? Everybody sat on their damn hands. He was for reparation. It was like maybe a couple black people that's in there. They clapped. But that room is full of people who was like, ain't no reparations. We're not getting no reparations. Going back to the conversation with Ann Coulter, where the dude was sitting there talking about well, we're all immigrants. So everybody want to play we're all immigrants. So that, again, it's kind of like the government. Nobody's accountable for what took place. All that happened back then, they're all gone, and that's done. We ain't got nothing to do with that. We just taking the benefits as what was given. We worked hard, pulled ourselves by the bootstrap, and you could do the same thing too. But everything that's been said in this Democrat debate is telling you the history right in your face. And then nobody touch it. I don't seem like I'm the only one touching it, right? So he said he gonna be down for it. And then he said he didn't get to no elaborate, he didn't talk about no numbers, he didn't say none of that. He said, hey Joe, hey, you know that guy that worked with you, know he said something racist. Can me and you go together and we get the cameras, we're going to get confronting him and we're going to get everybody to realize that we love black people. Right? Just BS, right? Just straight BS. That's all you can say. It's BS, right? And then you see, Joe just said, we talking about black people? I'm the only one on this panel who has South Carolina blacks, and then we're going to talk about South Carolina. That is when we're talking about the North and the South, and then we did free the South, and if those, we can get them to convince the rest of them that they should follow along, no one will have more blacks than me. And I was with the first black American president, black Kenyan president, right? American Kenyan president, right? He's not the black American president, he was black Kenyan president, right? And so, right? So that's what you're hearing, right? Everything that you heard this night, what they were talking about, is talking about what? BADOS. Andrew Yang, throw in, Martin Luther King, we throw some money, King was down for the money. $1,000 or more dollars, leave some money in your pocket. That could be a good reparations. Let me tell you something. If these motherfuckers giving you money, ask a lot of people who getting, WIC and housing. Matter of fact, they put some stipulations talking about shit. They legalized marijuana, but they said you can't smoke none due to the simple fact that our policy say you can't. So they put restrictions on you, and then when you break it, you lose everything. So what would happen if they was to give you money? You had to rely on them giving you some money. So that means ain't going to be no denying and taking no damn vaccinations. In order to get that check, you got to make sure that you bring that doctor's note in that your ass got all these shots. You got to do all this shit. You understand? So ain't nobody really down for that shit too, right? That's why he dropped his ass the fuck out of there, right? Nobody gonna be down for that shit. We see the strings attached to that money. We ain't falling for the okie doke for the banana in the tailpipe. We ain't understand what that is, right? So now let's look at the dude that said Andrew Yang talked about Martin Luther King. This cat said he walked and he was down with Martin Luther King. Now listen what he said. Now check this out. Check this out. Now again, we're going back to the beginning. What this is the foundation. But these are all things substantiating the fact of what I'm talking about. So here you go. A little bit more and then we done. All right, check this out.
This is not about polls. I'm not talking about polls.
We have 9 members of the Black Caucus in South Carolina supporting us. But more importantly, much of what Elizabeth said is absolutely correct. We have a racist society from top to bottom, impacting healthcare, housing, criminal justice, education, you name it. And clearly this is an issue that must be dealt with. But in terms of criminal justice, what we have got to do is understand the system is broken, is racist. We invest in our young people in jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. We end the war on drugs, which has disproportionately impacted African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. We end private prisons and detention centers in America.
Bernie, I appreciate what you're saying.
And, excuse me, we also, most people don't know this, tonight in America, 200,000 people are in jail without having been convicted of anything. That's right. 200,000 people, because they can't afford the $500 for bail they need to get out of jail. That is outrageous. We got to end cash bail.
Okay, let me say this. I've worked to end cash bail in California and it's gone. I've worked to end private prisons in California and they're gone. I'm somebody who's, our family, my wife and I started a bank specifically to support businesses owned by women, black people, and Latinos because they couldn't get financing anywhere else. But Joe, I want to answer. Really, I think you should come over and disavow the statements that this man made because, that were openly racist, that were wrong, and the legislative Black Caucus is against. I'm asking you to join us and do the right thing.
Okay. So again, Bernie says it too. It's a racist society, top to bottom, right? You name it, every facet that is permeated in. And what we need to do is stop the prisons, make it where you don't get no bail, you don't have to pay for bail, everything. But what is the true root problem here that needs to be fixed? So we just saying a whole bunch of things just to be talking, but ain't nobody really trying to do nothing. But then the point is, if black migrants or immigrants that come here believe that this conversation that you hearing right here is affecting you more than it affects us, then I know you are lying. Right? We know you lying. So let me go and finish off with this one here with Joe Biden, what he said, and listen with the stuff he say, right? Go ahead, crank it up. Let's get it.
I've already spoken to Dick Harpootlian, and he, in fact, is I believe, sorry for what he said. But here's the deal, folks. Look, we got to stop taking the black community for granted. That's the starting place. Every one of the things we talked about here, for example, in South Carolina, Jim Clyburn, he has a program, it's 10, 15, 30. We should be investing our money in those communities that haven't gotten help for a long time and give most of that help to those communities. Make it a priority. We should make sure that we have no one going to jail for a drug offense. They go directly mandatory mandatory treatment, not prison. And we fund it. And we fund it, and 3 days doesn't get it. It takes at least 60 to 90 days to make any progress. We have to pay for that. Just like instead of building new prisons, we build new rehabilitation centers. We have to make sure that we have a window at the Treasury Department that allows entrepreneurs who are black and brown and minorities to be able to get loans to be able to start businesses. You know, if you own a house, I know you do know, if you own a house in an all-black neighborhood, same exact house in an all-white neighborhood, exact same shape, the house valued in the black neighborhood would be valued as worth less, making it difficult for you to accumulate wealth, as my friend at the end of the line here says. So here's the deal. We have to do much, much more. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place, redlining, to stop it. I got involved through the civil rights movement. I became a public defender. That's why I got involved. There's so many things we have to do across the board, and in education. At-risk schools. We should triple the funding we have for at-risk schools to provide for 4, 5, and 6 years old to be able to go, 3, 4, and 5 years old to go to school, not daycare. Increase the salaries of teachers. Encourage more blacks to get into teaching, especially black men, because the studies show when there's a black man in a community, in a school, it increases prospects significantly, and so on. There's a lot we can do. I've laid it all out as how to do it. Go to joebiden.com. You'll see the whole deal, including criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
All right, did y'all hear about this article where it talks about the controversial group ADOS divides black Americans and fight for economic equality, right? That story was done in the ABC News. It was done January the 19th, 2020. And in this article, what it talks about is that there's reparations and the lingering racial wealth gap. And the conversation largely within the black American community, and they talk about how this conversation has received wider attention of lately, and based on what you have seen in the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates who are campaigning for votes, this topic has arisen. And they say, according to this article, that all the Democrat presidential candidates, except for former Vice President Joe Biden, is the only one who has not mentioned anything towards it. Now, again, in the beginning, as we've seen Kamala Harris when she first originally came out, and how the black corner of the internet, because this is where this is actually getting, as they're going to say, the controversial group of ADOS, which is everybody who is cut from the cloth, who are advocating, speaking on behalf, since we are in the campaign for the 2020 nominee for a president, based on the same old that has been going on. A new wave of conversation has hit online that has sparked the attention of black folks who are saying we're not just going for the chicken dinner and a good speech, that now we're looking for something in exchange. If I help you, you help me. How politics has been ran other than the way we've been playing it. And so they say that those who did support, really wasn't no real support, people just mentioned that they support legislation to at least study the issue of reparations. Now see, when they write these articles, they're speaking in double speak. They're speaking to you and I who could be reading this, and they're speaking to the opposition side who don't want to see that. So it's kind of connotative when they're speaking, right? So when they talk about, well, they're talking, but they're only talking about the issues of reparations. At least we're going to study it, right? And that's where the H.R. 40 bill comes in, as I told you about, as into Martin Luther King, talking about John Conyers, after Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, on April 8th of 1968. You see John Conyers go and sent the legislation that later on in about 83 is being put on the desk, and I think 86 it becomes signed, and then it takes 2000 for it to become federally recognized. But again, we 2020. So there's still states, again, as I spoke earlier in the video, that Alabama, Mississippi, and other states who kind of conjoin other individuals who they want to celebrate, not to just give strictly a day towards as what the federal holiday should be about. And so who they speak on is they talk about only Marianne Williamson and how she just recently ended her presidential campaign. They say that she fully supported. Now you see, she, again, being those who might have been watching, they didn't really give her no shine. They didn't really give her the mic. But they're going to use her as a talking point to try to say that, so when, you know, when we talking, the thing is, when we start speaking, people don't want to hear because we're speaking with so much truth that you can't have nothing to play a card on, that they use that situation as a card. So they can always throw in your face, well, the candidates did come out and talk about reparations. Matter of fact, it was Marianne Williamson. I mean, she spoke about it, fully supported it. She even gave a figure of amount of about $200 to $500 billion, right? And, you know, there was Kamala Harris. She was saying it, and Cory Booker. He made some legislations and baby bonds and all, right? They did that. All that in itself was about what? Just to say that it had been put on the table, right? And so, accordingly, at the same time, this article is also throwing shots at Joe Biden. Not again, we'll say, well, I'm supporting him or not. That ain't even what I'm talking about. But they said Biden has not endorsed any reparation legislation. So, based on what this article is saying, there's a problem with black Americans in this country. Because how can Biden be in the lead as a nominee for representing the Democratic Party unless black people are supporting him? So the divide, according to how this article is talking about the controversial group that is divided as black American, is there's a group that is supporting somebody who's like Joe Biden, who won't look at legislation, won't talk about it. None of that. Matter of fact, he's doing everything to go around it, right? But some reason they keep telling us that there's older black folks who are supporting Joe Biden. Now, I guess what they're saying is that support is coming from because he was as the article said, the former vice president. So who was he vice president to? Barack Obama. So if you was down with Barack Obama, and this is Barack Obama's boy, which again, if you know the history of how the vice president came into fruition, he didn't pick him. He was given him as his running mate. Again, it's kind of like, again, going into a restaurant. You may have a choice or a taste. You have a taste for something that maybe not on the menu. But on the menu, you can only choose according to what's on the menu. And that's kind of like the vice president. You pick according to who's on the menu. Now you can't just go pick and say, I'm going to pick my boy from up the corner on 31st and whatever. Woo, woo, woo. We can't do that, right? So, Joe Biden being that, which was the second in command with Barack Obama. So if black folks went out and supported Barack Obama and he was his man, then automatically you should be supporting him. Is the subliminal. Where black folks, again, ain't this your boy? But somehow the data, or so-called these polls that come out, keep telling you that Joe Biden is being supported by blacks. Now, who y'all talking about? Are you saying baby boomers is supporting black baby boomers? Are you saying Gen X is supporting? Who are you saying specifically is who's supporting? So they also talked about there is William A. Sandy Darity Jr., who is has a PhD in economics and a professor of public policy at Duke University and Sanford School of Public Policy. They got him quoted talking about he didn't anticipate that in this day and age we will be having the most active national conversation about reparations since the Reconstruction era, right? Reconstruction era. Now again, when this word had been out and talked about reparations, we had seen a lot of people, and even myself, had made videos because I was seeing people who are not cut from the cloth, who, if we're going to go under the umbrella of melanin, seem to not want to be happy that this was on the table. It seemed like we going to get something, like, you know, let's say Master, Mommy, and Daddy, and the favorites is about to get something, and so the other disgruntled children seem to be all angry and trying to persuade Mommy and Daddy not to give them nothing. And so what you've seen is the campaign that those who cut from the cloth are out here saying that if you, again, don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all, but then try to say that we are divisive because we're trying to garner something in the position because of how, again, seniority we've been in the country. And this is where they playing, to me, in the middle of talking about where there's a black divide in America. And so Darity, as one of that, again, of the ADOS, I guess you could say he's one of the economists for the group. And, you know, the national spotlight on this economic injustice, they claim, has brought a new wave on online. Again, as I always say, those who are avid watchers of this show, I say the black corner of the internet. Well, this black corner of the internet is kind of like in the Bible where it says the corner that the builders rejected. Let me say that again. The black corner of the internet, or the black corner of social media, is kind of like the corner that the builders reject. And so if you, again, has been an avid watcher over here, you remember when they went into revamp mode and called all the social media owners, CEOs, and legislative body to bring their ass over to Europe so they can have this thing that they could revamp how the black corner had been infusing, where you had those who was, again, remember one time when I was talking about FBA and B1 and all that, but because somebody threw a monkey wrench, I said everybody's now at half flag with me until you fix that and understand that whatever differences that one got, either we all had the same vision or there's nothing at all. Either you're going to have the same vision or there's going to be nothing at all. And so because of that, I believe, and slowly they've been peeling this, let's say, asparagus, right? There ain't nothing in there anyway. They're just peeling back because you got Kamala out, Cory Booker gone, Marianne Williamson is gone, Bernie told you like he had amnesia. Oh, what reparation? What's that? Right? And then again, these same people will sit here and talk about how they were down with Martin Luther King. And so maybe I have to kind of refresh the mind again what Martin Luther King had just said, right? Do I need to do that? Maybe I need to go ahead and do that again. Let me go ahead and do that one more time. Do it one more again. Ready? Let's do it.
With the problem, at the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, They built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
All right? So, here it is. The descendants, present lineage, is now saying, as Martin just said, trying to go to Washington to get the check. But we just had the holiday that you federally recognize. And again, even, did y'all see also that, or heard, and I'm going to show you in here, right? I'll show that later. I ain't gonna go there now, right? So, as to what Martin was talking about, that there was a period in time when, after some of the promises that were given, 40 acres and a mule, there should have been allotted land that was given because of the Homestead Act, Part 2, was not given. But we see that when they start to build those colleges, and a lot of these HBCUs are funded from that, even though they say they're historical black colleges, that, as Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King was saying, this money was given and opportunities were given to newly migrants of Europeans and things of that nature. But those who, again, had given blood, sweat, and tears, you still left them out. And so, that you say the spotlight on this economic injustice has just been the continuation going from the inception of the Virginia Company of 1619 to the present day. And so you say that the voices that are looking on, the voices that are online, Black Minds News and others, they say we are looking to disrupt the conversation. We're coming to bring disruption in the land, as they say. They say these voices that are speaking are leveraging anger over the racial wealth gap. And according to the article, they only say for decades. They only say that this has only been going on for decades. See, that's why you have to have shows, media, that address these issues from our point of view. Because if you allow them to sit there and write the articles, translate the stories, that doesn't mean they don't have no spins to it. And so, if you're not in tune to be able to catch the phrases, then something just gets past you. So sometimes you need other people to sit out here to either break down, discern, and give an opinion that's something either you might have thought about or may add to your thought, or, say your thought might be even grander than the one that is talking. So they say that, according to this article, that the average white wealth is 7 times that of the average black wealth. Now, again, according that the same person who said the Darity, now I had read the report, I actually got it downloaded, it's more than 7 times, right? It's more than 7 times. And they said that the gap that has narrowed since 1962. So again, as I'm telling you, there's a connotative language, there's a twofold way they're talking, and they're trying to, in one aspect, you want to tell the truth about, well, what they're talking about has some validity to it, but in another sense, this has only been going on for some couple decades. You know, Martin Luther King's only been gone about 5 decades. So it's only been going on for about 5 decades, and from 62 to now, they done closed the wealth gap. Now, who are they talking to on that? Those who are in opposition to anything that want to give reparations, right? They want to make that as a talking point, so they'll use that. So in the mind, they feel like, well, progress is slow. You guys want to have all that. You're getting progress. Like, you have some of our people who will argue for those who advocate on behalf of the injustices and disenfranchised and say that this is an imaginary, ghost of a conversation, that there's progress. And I like to ask a lot of people who be speaking that, how old is you? Who is your parents? And let me hear the conversation that they talk, and I'll tell you who he is. I'm going to say that again. How old is you? Right? How old is you? Who is your parents? Let me hear the conversation that they've been talking about, and I'll tell you why you think the way that you do. And that's why you have problems when people who sit like myself and others who talk about and bring this to the forelight, or to the front, to the light, right? So anyway, so accordingly, they said that they got these statistics from a 2019 study by the economists Dionisi Alaprantis and Daniel R. Carroll. Now, this is somebody, again, when you try to debate your side and a position you want, you can find whoever you want to support that, right? Right? You can support, anybody can support. You can find somebody who agrees with you. Now, the thing is, in this article, they call the Black Corner disruptors. Well, they said the disruptors are creating conversation online using hashtag ADOS. ADOS stands for American Descendant of Slaves. Now, over here, we say BADOS, right? And so they claim that this movement, which some critics fear. Now, what are you fearing? What could be fearful that black folks who, not for decades, but for hundreds of years, in the position they've been in, and let's put it this way, politically, only been in the game since 65. Only been in the game since 65. Which would bring you to what? 55, going on 55 years? Huh? So, 55 years? Yeah, you going on, what's that, 13? Maybe 13 elections, presidential elections, right? So, for someone to say that, from politically coming in, not understanding the game, to where we are now, trying to, again, what Tone and Yvette does, is they try to get people to become politically astute in how it operates, what you must do, to become a little bit politically savvy. And it has galvanized in the hearts and minds of a lot of those who are cut from the cloth. And look at some of the places in public schools that most of us come out of, civics is not even taught anymore. Civics had been taken out probably before the 80s in the public school systems in the cities. There were no civics teaching no more. So again, as I always said, that again, most people who learn the Constitution as a criterion to go into high school as your passing in the 8th grade. Matter of fact, I think if you take the GED, you got to take the Constitution test. And that will be all you would know about civics unless you go beyond that, which is political science and things like that. So most people don't have a real understanding about politics. And so somebody has used that to their advantage by, again, let's say churches have a denomination. And so by you leading the flock, somebody comes speak at your church. They don't tell you to go and vote. But if you're cool with pastor, then you're cool with us. So somebody got greased, and you don't get greased. You'll get a chicken dinner and some street lights, some false promise, and then you put somebody in, but that's not how the game goes. And so they saying that this movement of people who are on this online talking is creating a wedge between voters and the black community, just months ahead of the 2020 election. So now what they're doing is they setting it all up. Based on them talking and breeding a dissension, now they're going through this, false flag of a, let's say, what are they calling this thing now? This thing with Donald Trump, right? That's a false flag. This impeachment, right? And when this don't work and they all fall apart and they come back to the election, because again, you're going to give the same thing you just did the election in 2016. Take the lesser of two evils. And so there's some who spit on the black corner who says, well, if ain't nobody going to represent and don't speak the talking points, then we're going to sit out. And there's some who don't agree with that. But by them hearing that, they can use that because they can't win because of the constituents and the foundation that the present one is in. Most likely without having this core of black folks to support the Democrat Party, they can't win. So they're setting up, to me, this as to say, when all things fail, this is who y'all need to blame. And so they talked about in this article that the movement, which has gained traction on the social media in recent months, have attracted the attention of some academics like Cornel West, to politicians like Williamson, who even spoke at the event of the group in fall. Now it says the ADOS advocates are adding a whole new layer to the conversation of reparation and economic justice by advocating only for black descendants of slaves and not black community as a whole. Now see, that's divisive. Think about that. Is it for you, the establishment, you, a business, to be talking about whether black folks, as they wrote here, that black descendants of slaves and not black community as whole? Well, wait a minute. Well, black people as black Americans are living in the community that black Americans are in. We don't ever, other people have their own communities unless they just really rotten poor. Those are the ADOS, again, who are cut from the field Negroes, who have not either been able to use their talent that the white man can't make money off of, are all congregated pretty much in the same places. So those communities pretty much are ADOS, and there's some mix because, again, sometimes people have children with other people and so forth, and then, the mama still had the baby. But now that's going to be ADOS. As I said earlier, talking about the 1970s, they said that from 1970s, they knew that all the ADOS that migrated out of the South was all in these so-called chocolate cities. So to say that we're not looking at black community in the whole, meaning we're supposed to be holding for other people who migrated from other places, for whatever reason that they did, that's not our business. And as I said earlier today in this video, that when they talk about us migrating back, talking about reparating back, when I hear the undertone in that talk, it sounds like only those who got some money to come back with. You're not saying all of you come back. And now when they're showing that those who are getting them citizenship, the numbers are small. And the ones who they seem to be getting only got money. So you African when it's beneficial. It's not African just because you're African, but nobody want to say that. Well, I said it. That's what it is, right? That's what it is. And so they said that the advocate leaves an entire group of people, American-born descendants of immigrants, some of whose family had been in the United States generations. Wait a minute. Listen to how they write that. The advocacy leaves an entire group of people, American born descendants of immigrants. The word is immigrant, meaning you came from somewhere else. Your history is not like my history. You get what I'm saying? See, this is just to show you the bull, the BS that people who play so that they don't have to be accountable for what you know it doesn't happen. So you try to play the divide game to make us fight so that, again, it takes off the pressure off you. They got no hat. They got no say. This fight is between you and I. Anybody else, again, allowed to be able to come here? Did we have, like the old commercial to come on, I didn't vote for that. Huh? Did we vote for that? Did we vote for all this to come in and that so that we could be the beneficiaries to garner some of the benefits that was here? But you did that to undermine so that you have to pay us. Because you can't pay us pennies when we know it means dollars. Well, somebody, again, if we look at how these countries and these other places have been dilapidated and ran down and why they can't make none, that's not our business to talk about, is it? But that ain't on just their own. So based on maybe your cause and effects, you allow Muslims to come in. But they ain't got nothing to do with us. That's something entirely different. So for you to be sitting here trying to say, why you guys are not including those guys? Because it's going to make it easier for you to say, we don't owe them anything. So here we is trying to convince you to help pay for them too, when you're going to be saying, well, we don't owe them nothing. We ain't do nothing to them. You understand what I'm saying? Just nonsense, right? Straight nonsense. And so they go on in the article and they say that many whose family may have survived decades, if not centuries, of institutional racism. Then they need to get their ass up and start advocating. You get what I'm saying? You've been here for a couple generations. We've been here from the inception, from the beginning, and even before then. Again, as I made the analogy earlier, somebody, again, you're going to talk about, y'all don't want to recognize seniority, you don't want priority, none of that. So again, somebody who working 40 years in a place and I come in, get a field of advocate, you get the job, and I said, I want to be paid equivalent to that dude that's paid for, that working 40 hours. What are you going to tell me as the interviewer? Huh? So why is the employer trying to tell the employee that, well, we got to make sure everybody get a job and paid equally? Right? Game. It's called game. Right? And so it says, if not for centuries, it said, in limbo in the conversation, and the focus had pitted ADL's enhanced against people like journalist Roland Martin, who was descended from Haitian immigrants. It also appears that to address the American descendant of slaves from other countries, include the example of Haiti, whether they should be entitled to reparations. We ain't sitting here talking about whether Haiti should not get reparations. What does that got to do with us? They got nothing to do with us. But you know what that is? That's, causing confusion to get off and stay focused on the point. We're going to start throwing stuff in there, try to see what's going to stick. It's kind of like, again, when you get pulled over by a police officer. He already know he pulling you over for some BS. And he don't got nothing, but he going to give all the tickets that's questionable that could be under the discretion that he could say that, again, let the judge figure it out. No seatbelt. Who could? I'm saying I had the seatbelt on. He going to say he didn't have the seatbelt on, right? So the judge is the one that got to sit there and try to figure out who's lying. He said, no turn signal. How does anybody, who knows that unless there's a video camera that you can prove that, right? He going to say an air freshener in your window blocking your view is obstructing of your view, right? Right? He going to say you got a loud muffler. Now, how you going to be able to prove that in court and let you take a video and show your car turning on and showing, I ain't got no loud muffler, right? All questionable. But again, it leads the conversation to see who's telling what's what. So you got people trying to debate about what is right and what is, but the truth of the matter is, their situation in this country. Think about this. You here in the United States. If you got a problem about what your people and where you from, what do you need to be advocating for that at? What does the United States got to do with what happened in the country you come from? If that is, then that's the fight you need to get. You need to see you out here getting your heads bust, dogs biting your ass, getting hoes, and all that. So everybody wants to glean off of what our people have done and then say include us in that too. See, that's bullshit. I'm just saying straight up. It's straight bullshit. Right? So they said the disparity exists between the two populations at 2015. Said the Pew Research report showed that the United States born blacks were less likely to have a bachelor's degree than black immigrants, 19% versus 26%. Well, you can't come here. Again, they got it set up. If we ain't making no money off you, and you ain't putting nothing in the coffer, what's the point of you being here? So that's the incentive to keep them here. You get what I'm saying? Now the natural born is here. Whether he achieve or not, he here. Because he's been here too damn long. He's a natural born citizen now. He is a native in the land. He's an indigenous to the land. How you trying to compare that to somebody who's migrating? But y'all do that. But you do that, right? You went and got some stats. Oh, 26% to 19%. Is that versus, is there 40 million of them? How many millions of them versus one of the stats are you doing against? Anyway. So, just looking at this, right? This goes to show you that people really don't want to deal with. And again, as I said earlier, to take Martin Luther King and try, I think that's kind of like the curse in this country. You get Martin Luther King on his birthday, and then you get on his death. So he rises twice every year in this country to remind you what you ain't done. But you're going to keep playing like you're doing something. There is progress. And as long as you don't have advocacy and people who are cut from the car still reminding you, you ain't held on to none of the promises that you claim. You seem like you're trying to do everything to not be addressed and to have any responsibility for it. So we kind of know what the real game is here. Some of us don't act like we don't know no better, but a lot of us, we do know what it is. And so let's look at this, some further into this. We're going to take this break and come right back. All right, so lot to chew on, right? There's a lot in there, right? I kind of explained in that, so I'm going to just go ahead and kind of end it. I know it's been a little bit longer, but I had to do that. But we have to get back to the origins, where we started. What was the beginning, right? Was the Lindsay Davis who posed the question, right? Whether black immigrants have the same experience as black Americans, and using experience as the common denominator. You can experience something, but it's not just the experience, because the land was built on the foundation of, as they say, racism. Then it doesn't matter, as experience can't be used as a common denominator, because it don't matter what color you are. Coming here, the fabric of the nation is built on hating anything that is black. So experience, everybody can get it, right? Anybody can get it when you're black. But a specific people in this land have gone through what others know they have not gone through. And so because there's an advocacy for them trying to hold the nation accountable and advocating on behalf of the ancestors, why do others feel like we're divisive as if you don't understand? And as I said earlier, you got to be either playing dumb or you think we dumb. And I'm here to tell you, we're not dumb. To try to say diaspora wars, well, again, if you understand what a diaspora is, then it only pertains to either you Jewish or Black American. How they use the term today to denote anybody of dispersal. Well, how did disperse happen? Is it voluntarily? Was it voluntarily? Because when you look at Jews in Babylon, was that voluntarily? Those who were the Black Americans of the Great Black Migration, their existence in the country, was it voluntarily? No. So then there is no diaspora war. But somebody's trying to create a divide to try to seem that the people who are talking on behalf of it, that they're causing a division. And the only division is those who do not have a legitimate position to state. Shouldn't have nothing to say at all. It's like me coming in your house and telling you what I think how your TV is in the wrong place. Your couch should be in that room instead of that room. You should change your kitchen and put it in your bathroom. How would you look at me? So also in that video, we talk about the founder of ADOS. You have Yvette Carnell. I think co-founder is considered to be Antonio Moore. And due to, again, like I said, there's the bickering that has gone on between foundational blacks, black first, and me also, we all cut from the same cloth. We need to find that common thread because it doesn't benefit to be severed. They're already trying to do all this severing by causing the division, by writing articles, putting out news stories. And you have certain people who are out here who seem to be cut from the cloth that seems to be having disdain because they feel like when you say African, the question becomes, is there a country in Africa named African? And nobody would be able to say yes to that. If I ask you that the nations that are in Africa on the continent, each country has a name designated for the country that identifies the people, that trickles down to the tribe, that each of those states have distinct tribes. Why is it that because of the history that's been happening, the ordeal and the 500 years that has elapsed, since we cannot specifically pinpoint which tribe we are, but as of this day, being here in this land doesn't make that we love the United States more, or trying to say that we're more American than African, but our lineage has been only known in this land. We have 10 to 12 plus generations in this land. How do you separate that to say you're African? Well, it's African when it's beneficial when you are migrating here to conversate with us, which makes you take away from everything we have established as our ancestry have established. So you say that we fight you on your blackness. When you talk about that Cynthia Erivo and doing Harriet, and how they said that what went over with the blacks, Americans, didn't go over well. Even the person who created the movie, I found her on an interview she did on a show. And I'm going to play this last little bit here to give you that even she knew that picking her was going to be a problem. But she did it anyway. But listen to what she says, her reasoning for, and then I'll come back after that. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead and play that. So check this out. Check it out.
That are working together to abolish slavery, but also to actually move freedom-seeking slaves into freedom.
And do we have any idea how many slaves got out through the Underground Railroad?
Well, certainly hundreds and hundreds.
And this was at a time in the mid-19th century when the United States were, well, it was really divided. The South was a place where slaves lived, and the North was rather different.
Yes, in the decade before the Civil War, which is when Harriet takes place, there was this incredible division in the country. It had really been going on for 3 decades, where the South is knowing that they're going to have to assert their rights to own people, slaves. Their entire economy is based on slave labor, and the North is increasingly uncomfortable with the idea of slavery. But Congress is trying to appease the South to prevent civil war, and so you go through this very active decade where they're really struggling to keep the peace, and then that eventually falls apart.
In the film, some of the characters bear the physical scars of the brutality they suffered, but it's got a certificate 12A in this country, which means that everybody can see it, pretty much. And I imagine that when you were getting the film together, you did have to make a decision about how honest you could be about the brutality of it all.
Well, I didn't look at it as honesty. We have had very good movies and television, frankly, that showed the brutality of slavery, and I think it's very well known in our country. But yeah, I wanted to create Harriet for a wide audience, but beyond that, I wanted to talk about physical scars, yeah, but psychological scars. What is the trauma of family separation as opposed to the damaging of the body, which we're very familiar with, and some might say overly familiar with. These are people that loved and had children, and in fact, the slave owners exerted control over enslaved people through their families. And I wanted to talk about what that feels like, because it was very motivating and very much a part of the Harriet Tubman story.
I have read interviews with you in which you say that occasionally in film, African-American heroines can be made a bit too warm and fuzzy, and you wanted to be somewhat different.
Yes, heroes and heroines. I call it the fuzzification of African-American heroes, where they become kind of cuddly and all the edges taken off. And I think it had historic purposes. And for the purposes of teaching Harriet Tubman to young children, she's kind of like this old lady. And we would read of her heroism, but it was hard to access just how fierce she was. And I wanted to bring her fierceness to the screen, you know. This was a gun-toting young woman who was very, very strong and very fast and very, very brave.
The spiritual aspect of her personality, because there's been quite a lot of discussion, hasn't there, already, about perhaps your film dwelt too much on the fact that she had visions and saw into the future?
Well, it was the Harriet Tubman story. So once I realized that that's the Harriet Tubman story, and that it's actually something that we don't hear of as much, but as soon as you delve into kind of the more scholarly works, you realize that it's so integrally important to her story. It is the story. It's a Joan of Arc story. This is somebody who believes she was in a personal dialogue with God, with a higher power who guided her steps, and she said it over and over and over again. And she had these visions, and she not only told people about them, but other people witnessed her going into these trance-like states or falling completely unconscious in kind of these seizures and waking up and saying she had a revelation from God and she'd been told something and repeated what she had been told, and so it's been documented. I had to deal with it, or if I didn't deal with it, I would be in some ways copping out.
Since it came out in Britain, the reviews here have been really favourable, and of course the star is British, Cynthia Erivo, which didn't go down all that well in the States initially, did it?
It didn't. I mean, I understand that, and in some ways I was prepared for it, but Cynthia was incredibly right for the part, physically right for it, tiny, strong, fast, an extreme athlete, a singer, a wonderful performer, and she's got this incredible force of will. So I thought that she was uniquely suited for the role, and the amount of research and preparation that she brought, it really allowed her to create what I think will be not only a believable performance, but an enduring performance.
You also
All right, so you heard right there directly from her mouth that Cynthia Erivo was just physically built for the part, and that she has a certain kind of je ne sais quoi, as they say, je ne sais quoi, of her force of will. But then when Yvette was saying in the video, when she talks about how you going to bring something to the screen to be believable when you're doing a personage, a actual personage, and the lineage of those people are here, how can somebody play a part that, okay, I'm not going to say that somebody can't read the history and try to get into a part, but if you're going to sell it, now if it's a character that no one, let's say for instance, the difference between The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, then initially supposedly had Will Smith, would Matrix be a different Matrix if it had been Will Smith? Right? So we would never know that, right? Because again, we never knew the character of the Matrix. So when we got Keanu Reeves, he played the part, he made it believable, and that's what the Matrix is. But to play a personage of Harriet Tubman, who we can identify with because of our experience and our lineage in this land, and to tell us that black is black as long as the person plays the performance. And I guess the criteria was that the fact that Oprah used somebody to play Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King, right? But look at the backlash that's coming on these people recently. We've been knowing stuff the whole time, but I guess it's just kind of time everybody's been waiting for. And if Harvey Weinstein gets off, they gonna get it. You heard it first right here. If Harvey Weinstein gets off, they might as well pack up. They might as well pack up and be out of here, because they're gonna have no more credibility, nothing from them dealing with us. We're not gonna have no more dealings with them. You understand? So anyway, so when Yvette said that, that's what she was speaking about. But they try to make that seem like there was something, and yet the person who directed and created this knew that and understands that, but yet went on ahead and did it anyway. Matter of fact, Samuel L. Jackson even said that certain movies like Get Out, how the movie would have had a different outcome if the part that the person is playing is more believable by the people who, again, if this is probably an American type movie, it's relatable to black Americans playing a black American part. But again, everything our skin is our kin when we in our country, but then everybody else can self-identify and tell you their culture, their background, the tribe. So you're always leaving us out. We can never claim nothing as our own. And so you see how they sneakily called us African immigrants. I want to address that part. They try to sneakily say, oh, in the beginning it was African immigrants that came to this land. No. We were never immigrants. You know why it was never immigrants? Because there was no country. We built the country before there was an establishment of setting up immigration. So there was no immigrants. That word did not apply to us. Immigrants came after, because we were, okay, The United States don't become the United States until when? 1789. Which means we had been here already 70 years? We had already been here 170 years. From the time they became a United States in 1789. Prior to that, it was what? The British under the Queen. So when you talking about immigrants, we never was immigrants here. Those after the establishment of that, natural born, indigenous to the land. Try another trick if you like. So then they also go on and they say that Osami, he tried to say, well, look at this white man. He took a damn DNA test, and by your definition, he's more Black American than I am. What? Wait a minute. You ever heard a joke that Paul Mooney said that a white person in this country, if he shake the tree hard enough, a nigga will fall out? And that's why immediately when he said, see this white guy, she said, he black, right? Right? And she laughed at the shit, right? For the simple fact that a white person gonna have a nigga in there, because look at the shit they've been doing. But see, your logic is saying, right, your definition, no, it's his blood. His blood got a Black American, makes him more Black American, but him in his existence, he's a white man. It's obvious. Look at him. But see, this is the game y'all trying to play. See, and the thing is, y'all don't understand this game. And you think we don't. But we do not. Again, you had white people, sprinkles. We live with the white man. You understand? But that's how y'all play the game, though. That's a little bullshit y'all be trying to run. And then he trying to be slick with this question. He said, so African is more important. He said American is more important than African. See, playing with that. Oh, so y'all want to be Americans more than y'all be. And I be hearing motherfuckers saying that shit. I be like, what? All y'all that's running yourself over there, they ain't telling you all that's going on over there. Now, see, again, I'm news over here. I'll be up on all that stuff. They ain't telling you everything over there. But they got a lot of you packing up and going, and you don't even understand all the stuff that's going over there, and everybody's telling you it's cheap. It's cheap. You know why it's cheap? Because it's hard to get $1. And everybody who trying to tell you to come over there, how come they don't stay? How come they keep coming back? You need the money here. You don't talk all this shit, but you need the money. And you gonna do all the shit? Because, matter of fact, let me tell you something that y'all probably didn't know. You know, on February, I think it's the 24th, which is about 6 days from now, they're implementing, I think it's called state charge? I think it's called state charge, right? Which is, and then they also have, there's nations in Africa who are closing their visas. So now those who want to be Nigerian, I think it's Nigeria, I think it's Eritrea, I think it's Tanzania, and there's a couple, about 5, 6, 7, and the other one signing on. You get there, you staying there. Ain't gonna be no coming back. They're not gonna play because they're saying that, you know, due to what Trump is talking about with this whole thing about, you know, security and believing that these Muslim nations and they fearing that you're gonna use that to get up in here. So all them people who tell you that, they be talking about they Nigerian all the time and they love and miss it. Why they ain't there? And the next time you watching them, watch they ain't gonna be nowhere back over Nigeria. Because once they go there, they can't come back. They's there permanently. And they be talking that how it's cheap and it's good and I get my money. But it's hard to get $1. It's hard to get 15 cents. So of course it's cheap when nobody can't get no money. But you counting your money that you done got here and you want to take it back there and you want to keep flip-flopping back and forth. If you down, if you about it, show us. Stay there. Show us thriving and then your economics in your building. Gonna be no better situation. But you can play that game if you want. And you say, oh, you just hate that. No, I don't. No, I don't. I ain't cut off my African lineage. I just know who I am right now. And what my people is, and I know what people I'm put in. See, we fighters over here. We talk to a lot of people who like to damn run all the damn time. That's the other thing. Most of y'all is run mugs, right? You're always running from some shit. Ain't stayed, fought for nothing. The ones who stayed there, them the ones we got something in common with because they still there enduring and fighting. All you do is run. But nobody want to say, all the hell y'all do is run and shit. Right? That's all they do is run. So anyway, and we're going to sign close up. We've been going on long enough. So, so you had the dude come on and talk about that, you know, the different parts of drop off. Like we're playing like, no, that's the game you're trying to be inclusive in. We ain't talking about where you got dropped off for. Where you got dropped off is going to be the seeding of the sprout of the tree. Do anybody understand that? Oh, we were all on the same boat, which means we're all, again, experience is going to make us all tied. But you can't say that we were all tied family with blood. That we was the same family. You can't say that. No one can say that. We all became new, different people. Matter of fact, don't the scripture talk about making a new man? Right? We became new peoples. We want those old people who were from the continent, who would come and migrate. Those are still of the original stock that came from the continent. We became a new people with mixing and breeding with others that made us distinct, because let's just say, just like those in Europe. You know, Europe was distinct. Like those that was the Franks and those that was, you know, the Germans and all that, because they located and they became those people. America, when they came here, was the first time that they took all those different branches and put them in one place, and they started to breed. And this became this one kind of white person. Well, that's the same thing that happened with us. That's the same thing that happened with us. So we're distinct. But you're trying to use African to try to tie this so that, see, we're just no, we became distinct, man. That's not us trying to be different from you, but we're distinct. Like you say, you want to say DNA test, go say from West Africa, what's my last name? What's your last name? You can't tell me. All you're going to tell me is a location. That's all you're going to tell me. So anyway, color is the cast in racism. Racism itself is about black. Fighting for reparations, you got to be distinct about that. Because matter of fact, everybody be talking that, but what about those that are doing that for the Caribbeans? Did they include us in the United States in that fight with Britain? Putting a reparation clause claim in? Did they include us? No, they did not. So again, the question is, do black immigrants experience the same as black Americans? Oh, you experience by you being here, but our history is different than yours. And that's a fact. Again, I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind, and this has been another Black Minds News. Again, if you like, comment, subscribe, share, agree, disagree, it's all good over here. It's all about love. It's all about information. We don't hate you. We just have to set some things straight sometimes. And I think some of y'all playing games. I know y'all playing games. Trying to act as if you don't understand what this is. Oh, the slaves ain't as stupid as you think it is, because again, we the one that did all the work. We are the ones that cut from the one that allow you to get the leisure to run from wherever the hell you running from. Some of y'all, a lot of y'all, let's keep it 100. A lot of people that fall up under this migration, some of y'all were sellouts in your country, and you're hiding over here. And that's why when you get over here, you want to be inclusive and want to be in there because you can't go back home. We ain't stupid. Anyway, to the next show. Peace, love. No, we got to crank it, right? What you do, right? So you jumping the gun. You jumping the gun, son. I'll put it up there so we can get up out of here, right? Let's go ahead and get it right. Let's get it. Hit it. Hit it. Get it. Let's go. All right. I want to thank each and every one of you for clicking on the video. Thank you again for Black Minds News. Again, I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind. Again, when you see your brother, what's good, brother? What's good, sister? If you can't do that much, at least get a universal nod. Understand we're living in a day and time where there's some people who are here for our demise. So it's incumbent that we the BADOS. Stay vigilant, mindful, and together. Remember, we is all we got. So you're going to take this jealousy, strife, and envy up out yourself and realize we is all we got. So, to the next show, y'all. Peace, love, and to the next show.